who's on the line. Good morning to you. We thank you for connecting and joining us for the Mastermind call with the Dreammakers Network. Our first call in the month of June. Um, just excited, man, and thankful to have all of you, so many folks who've already dialed in and folks who are connecting with us online. It's just exciting. If you're on for the first time, we welcome you. My name is Byron Deese, founder of the Dreammakers Network and CEO of Engage Wealth. And it's just truly a blessing to connect for the purpose of personal development and continuously working with each other to identify ways that we can continue to grow from where it is that we are currently to where we want to be. It's just a great opportunity to continue to do this call, which we've done since 2012. So we're coming up on 14 years this Labor Day. So which is beyond a blessing. It's, my daughter's 15, right? So it's pretty much her whole life we've hosted this call. I think she's probably one of the main reasons why we even started this call. Young brothers trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how to enter this world of, parenting and marriage and all of that, work life and professionalism, and just trying to navigate kind of that transition from boys to men. But at the same time, it was also just really cool to be able to meet people who were goal oriented and, had some level of objective in what they were doing, and trying to associate with folks who were thinking that way also. That was, that's the thing. It's like, we look at these stages of life, and it's like when we were in grade school and we're trying to fit in, and you get to middle school and same thing, you're always trying to fit in. Who's your network? Who are your like-minded folks through all these stages of life, and especially during the development years. And the same goes for when we enter, kind of transition into the world of work and family and parenting and all that. You're trying to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people who you can advance with, you enjoy, you can learn from, and the ones who will keep you out of trouble, right? So, because I'm sure when we were looking for trouble, we knew the right group to line up with, and we probably had some good trouble, if you will, or bad trouble, one way or the other. But it's been great, I'd say, over the past 14 years with this network and hosting this call, to be able to have that cohort of folks watching, the ups and downs of our lives, the very successful opportunities, those challenging moments, those sad situations, and just riding through kind of this life experience that we have, but doing it in a way that you can feel that you're still on message, that you're still pursuing what it is that you believe that you're here to do, to have that kind of purpose-driven objective, to try to stay, fresh and understand and learning and, attending conferences and reading books and lining up with people who have something to share that could be of value. Like that kind of lifestyle, if you will, is what we're talking about, and which has been the case for us over the past 14 years. And I would say, it's for this call, the closer we get to Labor Day every year, I'm just kind of, I don't even know excited isn't really the word. I think just blessed. The closer every year that we get to Labor Day, and and knowing that we've reached another year in this engagement, in this network, is one of those cases where you're just like, wow, that's a blessing. Because I can tell you firsthand, there were definitely situations over the years that had it, if we didn't have this network and sharing and communicating and listening to other people's stories that outline when they went through certain situations, and then that situation landed on my door, and I'm like, how do I deal with this? And then all of a sudden, the call will pop up back in my mind. It's like, oh, that's right. Tassana went through something similar to this, and I remember Paz mentioning this was going on, so you can really begin to uh, allow those relationships to serve as an asset to your life. We think about assets, things that help us to advance, whether it be our financial situation and have and able to do more, if you will. When you think about assets, you have more resources to do more. Well, the same goes for this. I really identify this network as an asset that allows me to do more, to go into situations without as much fear, if you will, to not be as timid, because I've heard examples of people who did something similar and was able to talk through what the issues were and why I shouldn't be as nervous to go into the unknown, because we know people are doing it. It's not something that is just so foreign that you shouldn't get. I remember as a kid, you said, boy, you shouldn't be over there. Get out of the woods, get out of that ditch. Same situation. When you know that you can go into areas because you know how to navigate it, you have enough, learned experiences, examples to say this shouldn't be fearful. This should be, this is similar to what I've heard before already. And that's an asset. That's a very valuable asset to have and ready to go. So I just wanted to take a second and just show some value on all of you, and what it has meant for me, but also for other folks, knowing that they've been able to utilize this network and this particular call that focuses on personal development to go into the unknown with confidence as you're in the process of pursuing purpose. And I'll be clear, for the purposes of this call, and if you're on here for the first time and just trying to figure out what is this all about, I'll tell you right now, you can come and say, man, Dees, I have this going on. I would learn about this opportunity and this, that, and the other. It could be the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I can tell you, first thing, if it does not line up with your purpose, what you believe that God created you to do in this life, I'll be the first to say you probably won't get as much support from this network, even though it seems like just a home run of an opportunity. Because throughout this life, we're going to have people push stuff in front of us that they want us to be a part of. But at this stage of the game, at least for me, at least for me, like maybe when I was in my 20s and early 30s, I would say, if it sounded good, I was going to probably maybe try it out because it sounded good. And I wanted to associate myself with goods that were things that were good and progressive, and that could potentially add value to me and my family's objectives. But I can tell you confidently, at this stage of my life, if it's not lined up with the purposes that I'm here to do, that I confidently know that I'm brought here to do, I will not immerse myself in it. I can provide some, referrals, maybe mention some cool people who could be a part of that and could add some value, but it ain't for me. This is at the stage of life where just wanting to be every day, every thought, every action, every effort being lined up with the purposes that God created me to do. That's the objective. I don't want to be, 70 years old or whatever age, and man, I wish I would have done this, and I wish I would have spent more time. If I wasn't always working, and if I wasn't always working, I would have spent more time doing this, that, and the other. And I'm like, nah, that's not how I want this to play out. So let's get involved and get active doing the things that matter to you right now. And so The more we can talk about that, the more that we can remind people that that is important and needs to be prioritized, should be prioritized. The more we can do it, the better, right? So thank you guys so much for joining us this morning. I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. I don't even want to waste a lot of time. I really want to hear from you, particularly, um, for those of you, this is our mastermind call that we host monthly, but we are in the throes, of our 90-day goal setting challenge from Memorial Day to Labor Day, our summertime challenge that we focus on advancing our goals, you know, just not allowing them to stay, in our brain and we just between us and God, if you will, but to really put some effort behind our goals. So that in of itself is exciting. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys on where you are with the goal setting challenge and what's been going on the whole nine. So we're thankful and we look forward to hearing from you soon. So I want to highlight one for those of you who are just learning about the goal setting challenge that we launched on Memorial Day with the title of "What's in Your Hand." What is in your hand right now? And again, we've had goal setting challenges over the past 13 years, but for this year, the goal setting challenge is about advancing what you've built, advancing what you've already created. Even if what you've created is in your mind, it's on paper, it's something that you don't have to start fresh on. It's something you've already built. And now how do we take it from where it is to where you want it to be? And then even with that, unpacking where you want it to be. Like sometimes the real challenge is in the details of the growth. There are a lot of people who have, I shouldn't say a lot, most people have experience in starting something and doing something with it. Start it and do it. People do that. Human nature allows us to start to crawl and then walk, start to walk and then run. But there are a short amount of people who went from running to world-class sprinting, who went from, learning how to talk and then learning multiple languages. And so what we're really talking about for this year's goal setting challenge is how to advance what you have built, what you currently have, into something very special, something very valuable that is in a league of its own, that is sought after. It's not just something that you and a couple people know about, but it becomes something that is of value to the masses. I sent out the note yesterday that when you think about the word talent, and then particularly think about all the talent that you have, it's worth, a lot of times we have a lot of people who are very humble and don't like to bring attention to themselves as it relates to their talents. You may have heard somebody say to you, you're really talented. You're a great speaker. You're a great organizer. You're a great singer. You're a great parent. You're all these great, people sometimes will invest into your psyche around those talents that you have. I want us to really hone that in, to really take a second and just say, okay, you know what? Dee's always got me trying to focus on me, right? Yes. For the purposes of this call, I want you to take a second and just focus on you for a second. Like, I know you got a lot of stuff. I know you are responsible. You have kids and husbands and wives and jobs and employees. You have all that stuff. But just for this moment that we're here talking, I want you to just kind of carve out all of that stuff and just think about you. Say your name. I'm Byron. Like, say your name and let that now kind of wash your thoughts to say, we're focusing on me right now. And in that space, I want you to think about your talents. You may have never said it to yourself before. You've maybe never said, you know what? I'm talented at that. I'm really good at that. Now, I do know some of you who say it all the time, right? I know some of you are like, what? Yes, I will congratulate me right now. And I'm here for that. I'm thankful that folks are there, because especially for folks on this call, because I already know you're not going to abuse that. You're going to use that for the purpose of giving you that extra kick to move forward. And you're not, singing a song about something that you're not really that good at, right? So, because we do know those folks who will say they're great at something and they're really not that good. They just whatever. But for the focus on, if we are able to just take a second and focus on the things that you are good at, right? And then ask yourself, what have I done with that? What have I done with the things that I'm good at? Has it helped me? Are my talents an asset in my life? That's a question I want you to ask yourself. Are my talents an asset to my life? And what is an asset? A resource that continues to help you advance where you are and where you're going. So are your talents an asset to your current life? I want you to think about that for a second. And if they are, in what ways are they? In what ways are your talents an asset to your life? And I would even, at this stage of the call, I would even like for us to take a second and think about, how did you create that talent? Like, how did it become a thing? I think about some folks who, when they were teenagers and were athletes, and like some of my guys who were great football players or track stars and things like that. How did you become great at that? How did you become all county in football? How did you become a state champion in track? How did you do it? Because listen, there are a whole bunch of people who have lived life and never won a state championship in track or in football or in whatever it is that you did. Why didn't they become state champions? What was it about you and what you were doing at that time of your life that was just so unique, so advanced, that the other people in your peer group weren't able to do it? So what was it? What were the things that you were doing? I really want us to really get there. And it doesn't matter what it is, like whatever it was that you were doing at different stages of your life where you know that you were in a realm that was working. It was something that you were bringing to the table. Everybody needed it. It was advancing your situation. Do we remember how we created that talent? Or was it God-given? Did you just come into the world and it was just ready to go? Right? Some people, it's like that. I remember being in school and, growing up, and they just said, there were just some folks that's, we're in the same class and you're looking over and they, got an A on the test. I'm like, what? I struggled all week on that thing. Like, how did you? It's like, it wasn't that bad. And just getting A's on these tests, or it was time to, recite a speech or something like that. And they just get up and do it. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm over here, foaming at the mouth, looking in the mirror, trying to get this stuff together. So again, there are some people who just got to come into the world with talents, and that is a blessing. And you may not be able to speak to how you created it, but the drama is in the details, man. I think this stuff is so important to kind of dust off the cobwebs on how we were able to build certain muscles or create certain assets, and what did we do? And do we remember the challenges? Do we remember the hard work? Do we remember that moment when it was clear that we were beginning to kind of advance past our peer group in a certain area? Do we remember that stuff? Um, and if you don't, take a second and just jog it. Go back and pull from scenarios. Think about certain if you were in sports, think about certain games that were kind of those highlight games. But do you remember the game before when you didn't, have as many yards that game? And what was the difference? What you do in that week leading up to the next game that kind of turned the page and that allowed you to say, okay, I actually have the talent, but I'm maybe not as studious as some of these other guys who know the plays a little better. So I better either line up with someone who really knows the playbook, or I need to dive into it myself. Whatever the case, because how do you utilize your talent to advance your situation? So how do talent can take you far, but there is a point where you're going to have to do a little more, a little bit more to go to the next level. And so I just want us to again begin that process of remembering. Well, first of all, acknowledging that you do have talents. And I know some folks on this call right now. They're probably sitting here thinking, talents, so I'm not sure. Was like, wait a second, like talents. I don't think I'm good at nothing. And I'm like, come on, man. What are we talking about? And then you need someone else to jump in and say, girl, you know that you're good at this, that, and the other. So sometimes they need to hear it from other people. And that's just the way they're wired. And that's okay. But I want us to make sure that we leave this call today, number one, knowing what our talents are or what our talent is, identifying what it is. Two, connecting with the goal that we've set for this 90-day goal setting challenge to make sure that we are really honed in on what the goal is. And three, how do we use our talents to not only accomplish the goal, but to advance it? And I want to add one more piece of this. And for those of you who've been on the call over the years and part of this network, you know where I'm going with this. But if you're new, this may be a new little trick for you. Is that if we add another piece of this, my goal is that we do not make this singular, if you will. That as we look at our goal setting objectives, whatever they are, whether it be health and wellness, whether it be business, whether it be relationships, whether it be community activities, whether it be financial, that the moment we start thinking about more than just ourselves, because we have a history of feeling okay to give up on us. So, I'll give up on Byron, but will I give up on the family? Or will I give up on my clients? Or will I give up on that market of people that I really want to reach that I just have not reached yet? And then when you unpack that and say, well, why do I even want to even associate? Why is that a passion of mine? Why is that a goal that I'm trying to reach? Why am I trying to reach that group? And then start asking the questions. And we all know if you start asking questions, especially in this process, you ask the question 7 times and you start peeling the why onion. Why is this important? Because I think that these folks need help. Well, why do you think they need help? Because look at their living situations. Well, why does that matter to you? Because my grandmother went through that. Well, why does your grandmama matter to you? Because she, and you just keep digging into the why. You will get to the core of who you are and your purpose. You get to that why, and you got the raw, and you ask that question 7 times, and now you got the lump in the throat, and your eyes are watery because you're now at that passion play. And we just want to do this kind of stuff with pure intention, like to do these types of things on purpose and to do it as often as possible. And why am I saying this? Because think about it. There are a lot of people who are doing things but without intention. Then they're just coasting through life. You know, I got to go to work. I go to work. I get in the job, and just kind of moving along. As things and years are going by, things are happening, but intentionality is not a part of it. And I'm here to say, if we include intentionality, purpose, a burning desire, which is kind of built into the why, and asking that why question, getting to that burning desire, you put all that stuff into one. I'm here to say to you right now that impact will be your lifestyle. Not only impact for you and your family, but impact for folks who meet you. They meet you on the street. Somebody, introduced you, and one conversation with them, next thing you know, they're saying, Jesus Christ, like, I'm so glad I met that sister. Like, I didn't know who she was, but it seems like after I had a conversation with her, my thought process just kind of changed a bit, right? So that's the point of intentionality, for us to be moving with intention, moving on purpose, doing things on purpose that is still advancing from where we are to where we're trying to reach. But the other point to this is that what if you are benefiting more than just you? What if it's more than just you who's actually benefiting from your personal development? I mean, have we even thought about that? Who else benefits if you accomplish your goal? My wife is out there right now somewhere, working, setting her goals, doing her 50Ks and, 50Ks at 50. And somewhere, I don't even know where she is, but she's out of here, right? Before I can even get started with this call, she's gone. And I'm like, I know in her mind that's a benefit to her, but who else is benefiting from that? I know the rest of the folks in this house, because it changes your mindset when you start moving toward the goals that you have. I was just talking yesterday with some folks about my shift, and folks were asking, hey, well, how do you like being, back in Florida? And it's been essentially now, this summer, 4 years that we've been back in Florida. And and how has that worked for me? And, I look back, I said, this has been a blessing. I can only, if I look at it singularly, yeah, I mean, there were a lot of reasons to be fearful. Economically, my job was in Baltimore. It was in Maryland. So it's like, okay, well, you're going to Florida. You can't expect these people to keep you around too much longer. if you're in Florida and they're there, like, what's going on? And to be able to begin to dream and make a decision on how this is going to play out in a perfect world. How do you want this to play out? And then to see that perfect world and then have the audacity to pursue it, to see it in your brain, maybe not even share it with anybody because you don't want anybody poking holes in your dream, right? And so unless you say it here on the call with us and all, but sometimes you have conversations about your dreams and folks are like, whoa. Boy, you realize what's going to happen if you don't hit that, right? Like, you need to make sure you separate yourself from anybody who's ready to throw some real shade on your dreams, right? You got to make sure when you have these conversations that you're having it with other dreamers, other people who are dreaming, right? Because there's some folks who gave up on dreaming a long time ago. And they should not be part of your cohort of dreaming. So, we want to make sure that when you are in this process that you are really lined up. And I'll tell you, this has, for me personally, the past 4 years has just been an example of dreaming, faith, and commitment and intentionality. Just continue on with it and then continue to dream and continue to expand. but it's the fact that I know it's real and it's possible. It's not something, we've read a lot of books over the years, which has been a blessing, right? But I can tell you there's something about actually doing it, to get out of the book and then go apply what you've learned and actually start doing it. That will make it does something for your psyche. It does something for your reality, because you now know, even when things get very difficult, you have lived experience that can remind you, you did this. Last year you pulled this off, and you were in a worse situation last year than this one. So just go ahead and do what you got to do to take care of this, because it's going to work. Just keep moving. Just keep pushing. So it is truly a blessing when you do make a decision to act on what it is that you have committed yourself to. Get out of the dream world and bring that dream into reality. I highly recommend folks who gave up on dreaming years ago to begin to build that muscle again, regardless of what your age is. I just had a meeting earlier this week with some folks who are been retired for many years, but are now owning stock, investing in the markets and doing things that they would love to have done, 30, 40 years ago, but now they're doing it right now. I had another sister earlier this week was like, yeah, I'm 52 years old. I haven't saved up any money, and I would love to retire, but I guess it's too late for me. I'm like, absolutely not. Now's the time. You said you want to save and invest. Let's do it. And let's do it. And what are your goals with that? I had another call just the other day. Sister said, well, this is how much I have, and here's what my income is, but I got this other pot of money I'm trying to figure out. So, okay, what are your goals? I mean, I'm just ready to retire. Okay, but what now? Like, what's next? What's happening today? Like, your last day on the job, boom, thank you, Jesus, it's over. What then? Just gonna watch the soaps all day, or are you getting ready to engage into something else that is of value to your life? How do you see yourself? What do you want? Is it realistic? Are you not putting enough? Are you underestimating yourself? Like, really beginning that process of saying, who am I? What do I want? And why? And I can tell you, man, talking to folks every day in this space, there's just a lot of folks who just heads down working and hadn't given themselves the luxury of dreaming, of thinking about what's possible or what's next or what's to come. Hadn't even thought about it. 40 years have gone by. hadn't had a dream or expectation in 40 years. And now I'm 60, 65, and I'm like, I'm just gonna coast this out with that. I was like, the devil is a liar. Like, I don't care how old you are. Let's get it going now. You're 63, okay, cool. Let's go. Let's get it going, and realize that this can be fun. This could be a true asset to your life. So yeah. So let's take a second. We're at 7:41. And I can go on all day about this stuff, but I want to pull back and hear from you guys on this. We are into the month of June now. We're in that first throes of our 90-day goal setting challenge. Some of you are actively in it, seeing results, going through the process. And like I said, the drama is in the details. And so we want to hear the drama. Let's take a second and open up the call now. Anybody would like to share as to where they are in the 90-day goal setting challenge, or anything that we just discussed as it relates to being able to advance your talents, and then advance your talents in a way fearlessly, to take your talent to a whole nother level, like to reach places that you've never thought you'd reach, but to do it on purpose. Let's take a second. We'll open up the call now. for our folks who are online, feel free to comment in the comments as well. Well, go for it.
I was trying to give people some time. But I will say one thing that you said several things that really hit a beautiful chord, and I'll give a quick update too. But one thing I think the evaluation of the folks around you, again, when you're a kid, you heard, pay attention to you hanging out with, that's, who are you with is going to determine who you are, blah, blah, blah. And I think as adults, especially being in this home for me, back in the place that created me and made me, I got to see where the dreamers were, and I got to see who lived the life that I wanted to live. And one of the conversations my uncle and my family and I, for the most part, we bump heads constantly. I love those people. However, my uncle said something to me one day this past week or so, and I was like, yeah, we're back to this value conversation. We don't value the same things. You want every day to be the same. That disgusts me and makes me sick to my stomach, and that scares me. So when you make comments to me about what I'm doing and what you see in me and whatever my habits you think you see, you don't value what I value, so your opinion in this realm of my life has no value because we're not aligned. And like he made a comment to me about like my car being messy or something. I said, yeah, but I'm just coming from service with these people, putting together this for those people, doing the things that are feeding the community. Yeah. And you do some of that stuff, but you don't live the life that. And I'm working, and I'm creating a business, and I'm trying to be at the gym at 5 o'clock, and I'm trying to go to bed at 10. Hell, the front seat of my car gonna be messy. Hell, I remember being younger, and not even that much younger, but feeling like I'll never measure up. Because people made those comments to me, they didn't acknowledge my talent. They didn't acknowledge my gifts. They didn't acknowledge what I was doing and how they were even benefiting from the things that I was doing, or how other people saw our family, or how people saw what we were doing. I didn't get that acknowledgement. And then I remember fighting and wanting to be seen and wanting to be said, girl, you're doing a good job. And I'm like, they don't value what I do. So I can't expect them to give me accolades. I can't expect to hear that from them. So let me seek out people who are aligned with me, and I can then get what I need and what I want. And that's just, I was reminded of that. And so I'm grateful that you talked about that alignment piece, but also really, what about values? And if you're not doing things that align with your purpose, regardless of what your family trajectory, regardless of what your family, regardless of all that crap, then it doesn't fit and you feel it. And so I just challenge with God to listen to your soul, listen to your spirit, so your spirit will tell you and realign you when those things don't match. And being okay, regardless of who those people are in your life, to recognize when there's a misalignment and to name it, and to not allow someone who doesn't have the same values to decide what is valuable. That's right. Speaking to people's talent. Like sometimes you don't see your talent. Some of the things that I do naturally, they just are. Like I get it. I didn't have to work at it. Right? Yeah. I didn't learn how to study until I was in my PhD program, and I wasn't studying school. I was studying church. I was studying the Bible. That's when I started to learn the process of studying. Because school stuff and education, that's easy. I wake up in the morning and I can lesson plan blah. It's amazing, right? Because that's a skill, that's a talent, that's a gift. But the things I had to develop, I didn't want to teach Bible study because I was going to class in Bible study. So it was like, Cassandra, we got to work on it. Right? And so what does that look like? How do you work on it? Right? And so it's like, and sometimes people do have to tell you what your talents and your gifts are. And so that speaks to being with people who see you for who you are, not who they want you to be. And so like all of those things together help getting you where you need to be, but you have to listen. We have to be still enough sometimes to hear, listen, and wonder why people are always trying to put you on to something. Are they putting you on so you're getting better? Or are they putting you on so you can make them better and their bank account prosper, not so much your own. And so really sometimes sitting back and not being as busy as we're used to being, and watching and seeing where the character stuff, seeing what what that looks like and see how this manifests. Last year, I got to do my first vacation with you all in Martha's Vineyard. Last year, I was like, oh, I'm doing this again. And I'm still not working full time, but I just paid off 2 weeks for Martha's Vineyard for this year because I knew the priority that was set last year, and it changed how I thought. I saw that rest and time and quiet were things I never grew up having, but I also saw how doing that created an opportunity for true momentum building and connections and conversations that I wouldn't have if I was just being busy where I always have been.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's the part that I think at this level, you don't have time to do things that aren't aligned. You don't have time to do things that aren't purpose. But if you don't know your purpose, you need to be around people that see you for who God made you to be and have no problem speaking those things into you and say, hey, girl, do you realize you did this, and this? Oh, damn, I did do that. But I'm so busy being busy. I'm just doing it because I got to get done. But taking time to not be busy, taking time to invest in relationships that actually invest in you, allow you to be aligned with what God has for you. So I'll stop there. And Dwayne, I did I couldn't walk after day one because what I realized is you carry out some stuff. If I haven't started the program that Dwayne said, go ahead and do a weight that is a lot lower than what you would typically do because he got so many movements on the program that you will need to be at a 5 or 10 to get started, or you're not going to be able to walk or move your arms the next day. That's my update from the plan. The same thing, and we're working, we're moving, we're being consistent. Going to bed at night, waking up, getting up early in the morning to get started. So that's it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. Thank you for that walking in spirit comment, or moving your spirit, be true to your spirit, all of those things, because even in my goal setting, not only am I doing the 55Ks, but I think I mentioned last week, I'm also working on building a business to provide support services to elderly, those that struggle with health conditions and families in need. And families in need is something that is dear to me. I wouldn't say that growing up I was a family in need, because when you're living in it, you don't think you're that much in need. But then when I look back, I'm like, oh, I was a family in need.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm on the other side of it, thank the Lord, I have a heart for God, a heart for people, and a heart for service. And so being that person that can be of support for these families in need fills me. And that has caused me to say, okay, a goal has been reached, because I'm filled, because I've been able to help another person, another family, someone that looked like me 30, 40 years ago, right? So with all of that being said, like Tatiana said, when you're dreaming and you're goal setting, don't forget to follow your heart, follow your spirit. And when you take that leap of faith, make sure you take God with you, because you're going to need that. Y'all have a good day, good people. Let the joy of the Lord shine in your spirit, and onward and upward.
I love it. What you're seeing out there right now? What kind of wildlife have you seen? It sounds like you're in the middle of a nature walk.
Yes, no gators today. Lots of ducks, lots of bikes. I almost got ran over about twice.
Oh no!
Already, so about to wrap this up. Y'all keep shining. Keep shining.
I want to say something real quick before we hear from the next person. So I'm glad Tatiana both and Rhea both hit two things that stood out. I want to also get back to this point of knowing when we are in a creative space, knowing what things that spark and trigger our creativity, and being intentional. I keep going back to this word intentional. but being intentional around diving back into that space as often as you can. Because there are things that, a lot of times, I know I've said this a lot of times, but when we dive into the things that make us happy and to dive into the things that make us mad, regardless, on either side of the equation, it evokes something in us. It evokes a feeling, a passion, some type of something that makes you want to do something about it. You're either excited and you're so excited, you just want to keep that joy going as long as you can, or you're so mad and you're so sad and you just want to address it and fix the situation. It is worth putting yourself in those situations back and forth, and because it allows you to stay in your creative space, because you're trying to either keep a situation happy because it's happy now, you want to keep it happy, or you want to fix a situation that is sad or makes you mad and you need to end it one way or the other, right? And so it is a point of when you find yourself in a situation that gives you either of those emotions, allow your brain, allow yourself to be intentional to get into a creative space, to allow all of the options that are available throughout the universe to now be ready for you in these situations. I'm saying this on purpose. I want you to know that that's just how it works. That's my point. I want you to know. So, because a lot of times people, definitely most people want to be in those realms where you're happy and you're enjoying a situation that you would love to see it happen again. But sometimes people just you just experience it. I was happy. That was great. I loved it. It was such a great time. And then you're going on to the next thing. You were glad that it happened, but now you just moved on to the next thing. Whereas you could say, "Well, this is it. Like, what made this situation valuable? Why are people excited about this? What is so good about this group of people in this situation?" Like, right now we're going through folks graduating from high school and college and things like that. And you look around the room and you see people just eyes open and sitting up and like anticipating when their child or their friend or whoever's getting a degree, and people are yelling and screaming and all that. So and you can just be in that space for a second, or you can say, "Man, how do we keep this going? Who's on deck? Who's struggling? Who may not get to graduate? Who's in elementary school right now and they're going in the wrong direction fast? How do we get them engaged?" So allowing the creativity to try to recreate these kind of moments as often as possible. And on the other side, just as Rhea just mentioned, being in a situation where you recognize there's somebody who is in need and you're able to lend a hand in that situation and then see how much of a blessing it was to that person. And there is a difference between people who are in need and people who are in want. So you may not get the same reaction from when you do something for somebody who is in want, but the folks in need, they recognize that if you hadn't done this, it would not have gotten done, right? And here's the repercussions of this not, there's so many other things that's going to happen if you hadn't done this, So I just want to stop there for a second and highlight that these are we don't get a lot of chances. Like, it's not something that happens every day that evokes our emotions in a space where it now pops us into the creative realm. We don't have unless you're intentional, back to that word intentional, unless you're intentionally pushing yourself into a space that will evoke that creative realm. And I'm here to tell you, there are people who do it every day on purpose to push themselves into a realm of great things are happening or bad things are happening so they can go to work and stay creative and allow the universe to help them design something that could be of service on both sides, right? So I just want to pause there because that is something that as we go back and start talking about talents and what to do with them, how to advance talents, it is about being intentional with your talent and doing things in repetition to create just unbelievable experiences ongoing. Let's open up the call now. Anybody have any questions, comments, or want to share where you are in this 90-day goal setting challenge? We'll open up the call now.
Byron, it's Bonnie.
Bonnie Deese, what's up?
Hey, Bonnie Deese is on the call. And I want to thank you. You said earlier that you never know who, whatever somebody on the call is doing is inspiring somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing was for Maria, who set her goal at 50 Ks in 50 days or something like that, or throughout the challenge. And I was like, okay, I can't do that. Well, I don't want to do that. But I did want to challenge myself to walk 100 miles between now and Memorial Day and Labor Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I set the goal. I set the clock in the mornings. I get up and I do it before I go to work because and I also this time I know I'm being intentional about it. If I had a morning where I couldn't do it, I came home from work and did it. And so the fact that she was being intentional about it and the way she was showing me how she was breaking it down in order to be able to get it done within the goal setting window, I said, well, I can do that too. And I broke it down for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was from that piece. And as you're walking and clearing your head and the blood is flowing through your brain, then your other things start coming in. The vision starts coming in. And when you start to realize that your life is you're in a shifting pattern. And so now all the pieces start coming together in order to facilitate that dream that you have that's just sitting inside of your brain, to work on that thing that's already in your hand. And so I want to celebrate Maria for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to celebrate Dr. Dana and Chuck Battle because Dr. Dana said it's a check-in time. We got to get back together.
Mm-hmm.
And the band got back together on Monday, and it was like 10 years or 15 years, however long ago it was, we were doing that thing. And it was like no time had passed.
Wow.
And to be revitalized and rejuvenated and by people who want only the best for you and to lift you up and to be excited about the things that each person is doing and how far we've come since that time. And so, I want to thank you for the call. And I want to thank you for having the vision to do this 90-day challenge every year because it takes you don't realize though, if you look back on where you were the first time you're much further along than you were when you got started years ago. And I look at this time last year, I was suffering. I had been rear-ended, hit by a drunk driver, and another by a distracted driver over the past 2 years. I had 2 car accidents, and I could barely walk last year. We on Martha's Vineyard in Tassana, walking from the house to the gym, and then doing an hour and a half worth of workouts. And I could barely walk.
Yeah, that's right.
Now I can get up and walk a mile. I can walk 2 miles. I might be winded, but I can walk 2 miles. I don't have to have a brace on. You don't have to hold my arm to walk. I don't have to have. I'm not suffering with concussion symptoms anymore. So you push through. You keep going, and you make it happen. You just make it happen, and don't worry about all the chatter and all this other stuff. I had to wrap my head around, when the things that come that want to distract you from it, or or cause you to lose sight of what your purpose is. You know, that's noise, and it's there to push you. You just said it. You know, the things that's really bad or the things that's really good are the things that push you to the next level. And so I use it all. And I'm saying thank you for it all. And I'm saying thank you to everybody on the call for everything that you bring to the call. And I'm out.
I love it. I love it. That's real stuff, man. That's real stuff because we look at when we had our limitations, and some people wallow in when they're limited, just wallow in it, and that's it. Well, that's just who I am now. you know, you're going through a bad situation, and just like, you know what? Well, I guess that's just how it played out for me, you know. And they just end up that way forever. And listen, the devil is a liar. Like, I'm like, that is not no. We have to. Rhea and I were just talking about this the other day. You know, about when we have friends or people we know who may be going through something, and you get that strong arm of I know you. You about to be Mr. Positive in the situation and trying to fix. You think I need to be fixed? Like, you know, oh, that's what this is. What you trying to organize an intervention or something to help me out or something like that, and you and what to do in those kind of situations. You know, and I always just think about, you know, one of my favorite personal development gurus, if you will, is Jim Rohn. And the way he articulates, I've heard growing up in the church, the parable of the sower so many times, you know, that scripture, and just being able to understand that parable. But Jim Rohn broke it down in a way that has stuck with me for all these times. And I think it's because when he talked about the parable of the sower, it was during kind of the beginning years of me going into sales. And I remember I shared with my boss at the time. I shared that the parable of the sower by Jim Rohn with him, which talked about the equations as it relates to your sowing activity. You know, and so if you're in a position where you are talking to 100 people, here are the ratios. You know, here some of them are gonna be everything you want, and some of them aren't. And you don't care about that. All you care about is the sowing. You know, and so even when anything that we do consistently, there's certain things that may flourish faster than others, but we can't wallow or get too upset about the areas that aren't moving and growing as fast as the other. All you got to do is just stay committed to the sowing. And when we're thinking about how do we address and support and you know, help our own condition when we're trying to overcome something, or connect with someone who's really going through a fix, that, you know, whether it be they were injured and trying to recover, or going through a divorce and trying to recover, or anything that's just, or even grief in some way or form. It's that whole piece of meeting people where they are and being able to communicate and invest ongoing, consistently, in a way that is resonating. And it may seem like it's never resonated, right? You know, me and Rhea talk about this all the time, especially when you have kids, right? And you're saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I had to just tell myself, I said, well, you know what? I'm actually talking to your subconscious, because I know what your subconscious is going to do. I can't guarantee that you're going to act, you know, right now. I told you to do something, you didn't do it. Your subconscious is listening. And at some point, this is going to bear fruit at some point in time. And we just have to stay committed to what we can do. And what we can do is sow. And we want to make sure that when we sow it, we're sowing good seed. Or Jim Rohn called it excellent seed. To sow excellent seed consistently. That is the rhythm. That's the objective. And if we're sowing excellent seed, and how do you sow excellent seed? as we stay committed to the work that we're doing, that we stay on top of it, we stay moving faithfully, just being in a situation where we're getting the right information in. And when we sow, we're sowing excellent seed. So if you never heard it, go to just Google Jim Rohn, The Parable of the Sower by Jim Rohn, and let him tell you how to outline and understand that same scripture that we've heard 1,000 times. He definitely added value to my psyche, and that was a long time ago, probably when we started the network, the first time I heard it, even before maybe. But it's just truly those valuable nuggets that we can jump on. All right, we're at 8 o'clock, 8:07. We'll take a second, open up the call now. Anybody, questions, comments, like to share where you are in this 90-day goal setting challenge? Like I say, the drama is in the details, so let's do it. Rip the Band-Aid off. We'll open up the call now. I want to, we always try to highlight a book and what we're reading, and especially if it's something that has been of value. I gotta share this. So I don't know. I'm trying to think how long ago when I really got this book, but definitely over 10 years ago. There's a book called The Patriarch, which is it's a biography of Joseph Kennedy, JFK's dad. And I've read this book, I'd say at least 4 or 5 times over the past 10 years. But I read it again about a month ago, or within the past month, I got back into the book. And and I think, and I'm confident, I know that this is what kind of led to what is in your hand, this 90-day goal setting challenge. If for those of you who don't know, like a lot of times when you hear about Joseph Kennedy, you hear kind of the negative part about his life, of like just kind of people try to, kind of link him to mob bosses and his time in Hollywood, and then in the kids' tragedies of some of the Kennedys and all that jazz. But for me, there are a couple of things that I try to point to that particularly one that I always talk about in terms of financial management is how he structured his trust funds for his kids. That's always been something I would go back to and talk about with clients, is how he structured his trust funds with his kids. But I went back and read the book trying to get some more data on that, right? And it took me to the years that he spent as a Hollywood executive. And I've read this book several times, but something about going back and reading books later, because you're at different stages of your life later, right? And so certain things may resonate more with you now than it did in the past when you were reading it, when it didn't hold as much, value. So, Cliff Notes. Prior to him going to Hollywood, he served and he was a banker. He was in banking. And and one thing about banking is you are providing loans to people and businesses. And if you're providing a loan, if you're a banker, your main objective is, I'm going to give you this loan, but I need to know that you can pay me back. I need to know you can pay me back. So what's the process of feeling good enough about issuing this loan? Is let's go through an underwriting period to understand what your ability to pay me back. And so he went through that process. And I want to say something else here. Like, I think it's a couple of things I walked away with from this book is that, number one, his life experiences were not long drawn out careers. he would dive into an industry with purpose and intention, gather all the information he needed from that to be dangerous, and then dive into something else, right? And so he realistically only spent about 5 years as a banker, as a banker, really doing deals as a banker. But he took that, what was in his hand, being the knowledge of a banker, and took that to Hollywood during a period of time when the movie industry, the entertainment industry, was not only just kind of like a big hustle, but the type of movies that were being made needed, at least from his perspective, needed some help. Let's say it that way. Took his knowledge of banking and underwriting and financial management, coupled that with his goals, and then dove into a market that was highly lucrative. Because people are now going to the movies to watch pictures, and they're spending money there. It's a big phenomenon. It's like AI right now. Like, it's like, whoa, like, what is this? And who else is involved in it? Like, it was the big thing, motion pictures, during this period of time. And this was like the 1920s. So it's a lot of things happening, stock markets happening, all that. He took his 5 years of being a bank manager, doing loans, doing deals, took that to Hollywood, became the agent of the biggest, movie stars in the game. How did he do that? Because you find a need and fill it.